Hey everyone, welcome back to today's show. Really excited to have Congressman Ron Estes on from Kansas 4th Congressional District. Sir, thanks for coming on this morning.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being on.
So here we are, 23 days into the government shutdown. As of right now, there doesn't appear to be any movement, but can you maybe give us some insight? Do you know of anything that's happening behind the scenes in order to get the government reopened?
Yeah, it really is. It's unfortunate that we're at this point in time, 23 days now, with no funding on the government. The Democrats are continuing to filibuster in that, and if the the disappointing thing about it is that they're filibustering on a clean continuing resolution that they've actually voted on before. I mean, the exact same spending levels last spring and last fall as well. So it's disappointing we're here. My understanding is today or tomorrow, the Senate will have a slightly different motion to talk about making sure that we paid the military and that we pay the folks that are working, the Border Patrol agents, the TSA agents, the air traffic controllers, the folks that are out actually having to work through this process. And we'll see whether that passes or not. But in the meantime, it's just sad that we are where we are. The counter proposal that the Democrats are holding the funding the government hostage on is really a non-starter. I mean, they talk about taking money away from rural hospitals and giving it to illegal aliens and using it to spend for electric vehicles and other programs in other countries. And I think we ought to be focused on how do we make sure that we support Americans first.
And so, one of the sticking points about this, too, is the ACA subsidies, which are set to expire. And within the Republican conference, there seems to be two lanes. There's Republicans who say we should let these expire. They were only meant to be a temporary provision as we went through COVID. And then there's those who are saying, look, let's extend them for maybe a year so we can get the government reopened and then figure out how to tackle them. Where do you fall in that debate?
Well, the problem is the Obamacare has subsidies built into it. I mean, that base level of Obamacare has subsidies built into it. During COVID, it was decided when the Democrats were in the majority in the House and the Senate, and President Biden was in office. They decided to additional subsidies tied to that, and that's what they set the expiration date of December of this year. And now that it's expiring, they're realizing how bad Obamacare really is, and so it's one of those things that we've got to address the problems with Obamacare. It was promised to lower premiums. It was promised that people could keep their doctor, keep their insurance. And it did provide some insurance for some folks that were previously in low risk pools or in high risk pools or other areas or did not have insurance. But we've seen premiums continue to increase, and we can't keep going forward like this. But the, the the distraction from funding the government is the talk about the problems with Obamacare. I mean, we need to focus on getting the government open so that we can address all the issues that we have to address as a country and make sure that we're moving forward.
Yeah, the ironic thing about Obamacare is it's called the Affordable Care Act. The first word, affordable, it seems not affordable at all since it was enacted nearly 15 years ago. I mean, even just from personal experience, I can tell you next year, and I don't have government insurance, I have private insurance, but even those premiums are going up about 8-10%. So this is across the board that we're seeing this issue with premiums. The average family now, it's $27,000 a year to pay for their health insurance.
Yeah, and it really is. And you really at that point in time don't have an insurance program that provides you good health care. I mean, you if you're spending 27,000 a year in combination of premiums and then you add the deductibles on top of that, you're spending thousands of dollars, whether you're on a private plan or whether you're on one of the subsidized Obamacare plans. It's thousands of dollars out of your pocket before you actually get any benefit from that insurance. And so there's a major problem with the so-called Affordable Care Act. And as you said, it's no longer affordable. It never was really affordable, and it's just gotten worse. And through that process, it didn't improve care any. It didn't increase the number of doctors, or didn't increase the number of people that could keep their old good insurance that they liked.
I want to talk about your work on the Ways and Means Committee, which is one of the oldest committees there in Congress. So obviously, you guys tackled the big beautiful bill. But now that that's behind us, what's next? What are your priorities on that committee?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things out there. Obviously, as you talked about the one big beautiful bill or the Working Families Tax Cut Act that we focused on, we wanted to make sure that we helped the economy grow. I mean, we saw after 2017 the economy took off, and instead of the old new normal process that President Obama talked about in Economist when Obama was in office, we looked at how do we grow the economy. And a lot of the things that we put in the one big beautiful bill, we made permanent because we saw the positive things after 2017. And so a lot of those are in place moving forward, whether it's the corporate rates and the individual rates, whether it's looking at things like how do you deduct research and development costs in the year that you incur them so that we can continue to be the biggest innovation in our country. We did so much. I mean, there are some things that we continue to look at. Right now, one of the things we did with the One Big Beautiful Bill was push back on international tax scheme that had been developed with the Biden administration and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and basically was creating a tax that would be on primarily U.S. businesses and increase their costs. And so what we recognized there was that wasn't going to work. And so the process that we started when President Trump came into office was the administration has been very active in negotiating how do we address this moving forward. And there's continued work on that international tax aspect. I've had several meetings in the last couple of weeks talking with folks, not just U.S. businesses, but also from the European Commission, as well as from Global Business Alliance and the individuals that are affected by some of those provisions. And I think we all agree that there's a whole host of problems with this Pillar Two international tax scheme that they'd come up with. And we've got to address that, and we're going to continue to focus on that, making sure that we look out and utilize the American tax code to be a level playing field for a business, whether you're based in America or whether you're based in another country and you have operations in America. And we're going to continue on that. There's some other provisions for the year end of 2025. Chairman Jason Smith of Ways and Means Committee, talks a lot and wants to do a bipartisan tax bill. There's some smaller provisions, tied to production costs for entertainment industry. For one of the things that I led was helping songwriters be able to write off the demo costs, but that expires at the end of this year. There's several other different provisions at the year end that we want to address. And then there's probably an opportunity, although it may go into next year, of looking at, okay, what's the next thing that we do? What do we focus on in terms of how do we make sure we keep good economic growth?
The committee Ways and Means also has jurisdiction over Social Security. I know this is something that's very important to you. I'm 33 years old. At this point right now, as things stand, I have no hope that I will be collecting a Social Security paycheck. I just don't believe it if things continue on the path that they are. So what needs to happen in order to make the program continue to be solvent for someone like me who still has 30, 35 years ahead of them in the workforce?
Yeah, we really have a lot of work cut out in that arena. One of the things that was uh, set up 40 years ago, when they saw Social Security was running out of money at that point in time, and the projections into the future were pretty dire when you were looking at the baby boomers who were entering the workforce and recognizing that when they retired, there'd be a large number of retirees. And so there were some provisions and changes made in the 80s to actually build up the trust fund a little bit while baby boomers were working. And now, as we look to the future, we're seeing that trust fund run down like it was designed to do as the baby boomers are retired. So we've got to come back and do a very similar process to look at that. What do we do for the future? The Social Security program is designed to help all Americans, and but what it's designed to do is that it only pays out in benefits what the trust fund has in income. And so on any given year, as we've individuals have lived longer, and as innovative ideas and new technologies has made it easier for workers the same or fewer workers to actually produce the same economic output. We've seen fewer workers per retiree. It's down to less than three now workers per retiree, where it was over six or seven, decades ago. And so there's obviously less money going into the trust fund as retirees are pulling it out. So we've got to address that. Obviously, it's a great program that people really value as retirees in terms of supporting them. And for folks that are your age, one of the things I do want to remind everybody is that a percentage will still be paid out to anybody. It's just that when the trust fund runs down in less than 8 years, it will have only be a percentage of what the current calculation is. So right now that percentage is about 77 cents on the dollar. So everybody will receive less money, which makes it pretty imperative that we start working now to be able to address that, so that we can protect not just the current retirees, but also folks into the future, whether they're in their 40s or 50s, or whether they're in their 20s and 30s as well.
And it's not like we need to search long and far for a solution. We know what some of the solutions are in order to fix the program. The problem is it's going to require compromise between the Republicans and the Democrats. So Republicans, they might say, well, we might need to raise the Republicans would say we need to raise the retirement age. Democrats would say no. Each side is going to have to give and take a little. Do you have any hope, though, that there can be a middle ground?
I think there is. I think part of the issue that was looked at in the 80s when they pulled together the solution there was differences of opinion then, and they were able to come together and pull together, make that work. Some of the things as we look at it is as people are aging longer. When Social Security was first started in the 1930s, the average life expectancy was 63. So when 65 was picked as the age that you would start drawing Social Security, most people had already passed away through that process. So as we now have life expectancies, at birth up to 74, and when somebody turns 65, their life expectancy is up into the 80s. We actually have to take account for that and look at that impact on age. We also need to look at how do we address the money going into the system, making sure that we have, as workers and employers, continuing to make the payroll tax and support that we continue to build up into the trust fund. I know occasionally people look at opportunities to take money out of that because they think it's a source of revenue that they can use elsewhere, but we need to make sure that we protect and preserve Social Security going forward.
As I mentioned, you represent the 4th District there in Kansas. Tell me a little bit about your district for my listeners who aren't familiar.
Yeah. So it's South Central Kansas, centered around the city of Wichita, and it includes, of course, the big urban areas in Wichita, but also a lot of rural areas as well. We call ourselves the air capital of the world because of the amount of aviation footprint that we have there. And there's roughly 60% of the planes that are flying today have, if not made completely in Wichita, have huge components that come out of Wichita. And particularly when you look at general aviation and a lot of the commercial aviation. Every 737 starts in Wichita with the cockpit and the fuselage made there. And then it's sent out to Washington to have the wings and the wheels added onto that. And Textron, Beechcraft, Cessna, Bombardier, Spirit Aerosystems are all located in Wichita and make a lot of aircraft every year that we all use and value around the world. The other thing in my district is we have a good footprint of oil and gas in terms of production. Kansas does produce a fair amount of oil and gas, but it's very low volume producers. You don't get the big gushers like you see in the movies that come out of a well. So obviously, being able to produce energy, whether it's hydrocarbons, we have a lot of wind farms as well in our state, and produce much more wind energy than we utilize in the state. And about half of what we produce is shipped out of state. And then on an agriculture footprint, we have a lot of farmers that focus on making wheat, making corn, soybeans, ethanol, and a big support for not just Americans, but around the world as well, to make sure that people have food to eat as well as energy from ethanol and being able to use that. So I really focus a lot within my district on how do we make sure that we support our rural areas, support rural hospitals, make sure that we support uh, the property rights for landowners and making sure that bad regulation doesn't come out of Washington, whether it's regarding use of water, because that's a big thing in Kansas, particularly in my district in the western part of the state, in terms of making sure that we have sustainable water now and for the future, and also making sure that we're smart on things like Endangered Species Act. I mean, we've had some issues over the last few years, starting back with the Obama administration, in terms of looking at some species like the lesser prairie chicken, where they wanted to list it as endangered because they counted the number of prairie chicken the year after a drought came through. And in Kansas, we have it rains more some years than it does others, and you have to just take that into account and figure out what's the long term trend and how do we make sure that we have sustainable habitat ongoing into the future.
What makes it all worth it? I mean, the life of a congressman is a very busy one. You got to travel back and forth to DC all the time. Obviously, we're in a very, very highly partisan atmosphere where not only you as a serving member, but maybe members of your family are subjected to personal attacks. So, what makes you continue to want to do this every 2 years?
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of a passion. Both for both my wife and I. We actually met at a Young Republican National Convention, and she's currently serving as a state representative in the Kansas legislature. And so we focus on not only early in our marital life, we helped a lot of other people run for office, and I wanted to get more involved in helping run for office as well. So I first ran for county treasurer and then for state treasurer. I served 6 years as Kansas state treasurer. One of the things I saw when I was state treasurer was that there was a lot of bad policy, bad legislation coming out of Washington that we were actually spent a lot of time as treasurers being able to talk about, instead of focusing on how do we do best practices within our offices, is how do we adjust to what's coming out of the federal office. So it kind of motivated me to run for Congress and actually focus on how do we come up with good policy, good legislation that helps not just make government processes run smoothly at the federal level or state or local level, but also helps make individuals, whether you're Kansans or whether you live somewhere else in the United States. We want to make sure that there's good policy out there, that we actually approach and help folks live the lives that they want to live without an overbearing big government that's focusing and directing and mandating that they do a lot of things. So it kind of incentivizes me to come out and look at how do we come up with some of those best practices.
One of the stories the left is pushing this week regards the White House renovation that President Trump is doing. So the way they're framing it is the President Trump is building a $250 million renovation up for a ballroom, and people are going to be losing their food stamps if the government doesn't reopen. What do you make of that story?
Yeah, I think it's a distraction from the Democrats not focusing on funding the government and not being willing to vote that. The expansion. There is not a big ballroom on the White House ground. I mean, there's not a big room in there. And my wife and I have been to the White House for Christmas parties, and if you invite all of Congress, the House and the Senate, obviously everybody doesn't go. But even you have events like that or state dinners or state events, it's just not a huge facility to do that. So being able to build the ballroom, which is being funded by private donations, I mean, it's not taxpayer money that's going into it. I think it's a good addition to the White House. I think if you look over the years, a lot of presidents have done remodeling and improvements and enhancements. Whether it's actually the West Wing was added as part of an enhancement into the White House, and whether you look at FDR, whether you look at President Truman or President Carter, or even during President Obama and President Clinton's term, there were changes made to the White House and adjustments. I think this is one of those things that uh, you take a snapshot, which I've seen some of the memes out there of some of the construction activity, and it makes it looks like a bad picture. But in reality, I think it's going to be a very positive thing for the White House to be able to have a facility and a venue there that they can use for state dinners and other events.
All right, Congressman. Well, we'll leave it there for now, but I really enjoyed the conversation with you, and best of luck to you as you continue your work there in DC, and I hope to have you back again in the future.
Well, great. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.